They say the first night is the moment every bride dreams of. But no one tells you how overwhelming it can feel when silence fills the room. My name is Aisha, and it was my wedding night. The house was quiet now, the music and laughter of guests long gone. I sat on the bed, heart racing, hands trembling under the red dupatta my mother had chosen. I had imagined this night countless times, smiles, soft words, gentle reassurance. But now, I felt fear instead. My husband, Hamza, entered the room quietly and only greeted me softly, sitting on the sofa. His calmness, meant to be kind, made my anxious mind race. Was he disappointed? Did he already love someone else? Was I simply unwanted? My mind filled with doubt. Yet I stayed silent, hoping he would speak, hoping I wasn't misreading him. The silence stretched between us, heavy and suffocating. I tried to adjust my bangles, pretending to be busy, but every tick of the clock reminded me of the distance I felt. Hamza spoke softly at last. You must be tired. You can rest. His words were gentle, but I couldn't respond. My eyes were full of tears I tried to hide. In that quiet moment, I assumed the worst. Maybe he didn't want to be near me, maybe he found me awkward or unworthy. I turned toward the wall, letting the tears fall silently, wishing the night would end. What I didn't know was that Hamza's silence wasn't rejection, it was care. He wanted to give me space, to respect me, because he understood that rushing or forcing closeness would only increase my fear. His heart was anxious too, mirroring mine, yet we both hid it behind quiet. That night, I slept with questions, unaware that understanding was just beginning. Morning came softly, sunlight filtering through the curtains. I woke with red, swollen eyes, unsure if I should face Hamza. The room smelled faintly of tea and fresh air, but my heart was heavy. As I stepped into the living room, I saw him arranging breakfast with a gentle smile. "Good morning," he said, his voice calm, steady, and full of warmth. I nodded quietly, my throat dry, unsure how to respond. Then he asked, "Are you okay?" His concern cut through my lingering fear. At that moment, I realized everything I feared the previous night was a misunderstanding. Hamza had been patient, giving me the space I needed. His silence wasn't indifference, it was care. Every thoughtful gesture, every quiet moment had been his way of respecting me. That morning, relief washed over me, blending with gratitude. For the first time, I truly understood his heart. It wasn't about words or hurried actions. It was about patience, trust, and gentle love. The days that followed were quiet, yet each moment deepened our bond. Hamza didn't rush, but showed care in small ways. Some mornings he brought me tea just the way I liked it, sometimes a tiny gift, sometimes simply a smile that warmed my heart. I noticed the little things he remembered, my favorite flower, my love for soft music, the way I laughed at certain jokes. Slowly, the fear I felt on our wedding night faded, replaced by comfort. I started sharing more about myself, my dreams, my childhood memories, even silly little habits I once thought unimportant. Hamza listened patiently, genuinely interested, never interrupting, never judging. It was in these small gestures that I saw the real man behind the calm exterior. I realized that love wasn't just in grand declarations. It lived in the quiet, thoughtful actions, in understanding and respecting each other's feelings. That week, I began to trust him completely. The walls I had built out of fear slowly crumbled, replaced with warmth and safety, and a promise of love built on patience and understanding. One evening, Hamza and I found ourselves on the rooftop, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of gold and pink. The cool breeze brushed gently against our faces, carrying the soft scent of flowers from the garden below. I looked at him, feeling the weight of the fear from our first night, and whispered, "Hamza, I was scared that night. I thought you didn't care." He turned to me, his eyes calm and gentle, and said, "Love doesn't always start with words, Aisha. Sometimes it begins with silence, patience, and respect." His words sank deep into my heart, and I felt a warmth I had never known before. That moment, simple yet profound, shifted everything. I realized that he hadn't ignored me. He had been giving me the space to feel safe, to adjust, to trust. For the first time, I understood that love could grow slowly, without force or rush, and that sometimes patience could speak louder than any words. As we laughed quietly, the distance between us melted away, leaving only a soft, tender connection that promised understanding, respect, and a love built to last. The days that followed were quiet, yet filled with small moments that spoke louder than words. Hamza and I didn't need to force conversations. Instead, our gestures and glances began to communicate what our hearts were feeling. Each morning, he would leave for work with a gentle nod, and I found myself eagerly waiting for his return. Sometimes he brought little surprises. A sweet treat I loved, a small gift that showed he was thinking of me. Other times, it was simply a smile or a soft good morning that filled the room with warmth. I began noticing the subtle ways he cared, like setting the breakfast table just how I liked it or quietly helping with something around the house without making a fuss. In those moments, I understood that love wasn't always about grand declarations. It was about respect, patience, and consistency. Each day, I felt our bond deepen, not through words, but through understanding. Even when I felt nervous or unsure, his calm presence reassured me. I realized that our relationship was growing in strength and trust, like a garden nurtured slowly but surely. Every small act of kindness, every gentle gesture, became a thread weaving our hearts closer together, building a connection that felt safe, steady, and real. As our days passed, we began to share more than just glances and smiles. Slowly, I started opening up about my dreams, my favorite colors, my childhood memories, and the little hopes I had tucked away in my heart. Hamza listened with a patience I had never experienced before. He didn't interrupt or dismiss my thoughts. Instead, he absorbed each word as if it mattered deeply to him. One evening, curiosity led me to ask about his dreams, the things he held close but rarely spoke aloud. His eyes softened, and he shared how he wanted to start a small business, build a home for his parents, and create a life filled with stability and love. Hearing him speak of his hopes and fears made me admire him even more. It wasn't just that he had ambitions. It was the care and thoughtfulness behind each one. In those moments, I realized that love wasn't about grand gestures or instant passion. It was about knowing someone, understanding their inner world, and feeling connected to their journey. Each story we shared became a bridge, closing the distance between us. I felt our bond strengthen, not through words alone, but through mutual respect, trust, and the vulnerability we offered one another without fear or judgment. It was in these quiet exchanges that I discovered the real depth of our growing love. One evening, Hamza and I sat quietly on the rooftop, watching the sun sink behind the horizon. The sky glowed in soft golds and pinks, and the cool wind brushed gently against our faces. I turned to him, my heart still carrying the memory of our first night's misunderstanding, and whispered, "Hamza, I was scared on our wedding night. I thought you didn't care for me." He looked at me with gentle, steady eyes, full of warmth and understanding. "Love doesn't always begin with words, Aisha," he said softly. "Sometimes it begins with patience, silence, and respect." Those words touched something deep within me. I realized that the silence I had feared was never rejection. It was his way of showing care. That night, as he held my hand for the first time, not with urgency or passion, but with calm reassurance, I understood that love isn't about rushing or grand gestures. It is about trust, understanding, and slowly building a connection that feels safe and true. From that moment, our hearts began to align. Every gesture, every shared smile, every small promise brought us closer. Real love, I learned, begins with respect, patience, and a willingness to truly see one another.